think people might misconstrue. They go, well, everything's always good for Matt. All of Matt's circumstances are rainbows and unicorns and it's sunny every day. And that is not the case. Here's what I love. Even on the hard days, even in the deepest valley days, there are things that are still good.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and anyone else who's listening out there, welcome back to the Eternal Optimist podcast. I'm your host, Matt Drinkon, and today we have a special treat. I'm just going to talk for an hour solo. I'm just kidding. No, my dear friend Trent is here, and we're going to have a playful time today. We've already talked about the spirit of play, and Trent Booth, my friends, this is going back in time. Trent has had a really outsized impact on my life, and I've not had a chance to express that to him the way I wanted to until now. So I'd like to do that. That Trent, I met him at a very important time in life when I was a new business professional, and he was already 3 years ahead of me. So he just turned 50, and about half a life ago, when I was 22 and he was 25, he had a real big influence on me, and it's a real sincere pleasure to have him on the podcast today. So welcome, my friend Trent Booth. Trent, how are you, my friend?
I'm outstanding. Thanks for having me, Matt. I'm really excited we're connecting here. A little delayed. We could have done this a couple of months ago, but I'm glad we're doing it now.
So back on the spirit of play, I'm going to try to be playful about this because I don't normally get stood up a day or two in advance of the show. So tell me, what was the big reason why we had to reschedule, Trent?
Well, here's the thing. I would actually have said no to my friend who said, we have got a shot at 24 hours in Portugal if you can rearrange your schedule. Normally, if I'm on another podcast where I don't know the guy for 20 plus years, I might say, you know what, I got to do the podcast. I can't go. But it's Matt Drinkon, my buddy, will be cool. And we literally, on a dime, flew out of Newark, flew into Porto. He texted me on a Sunday, Porto? ? I'm like, what's a Porto? I didn't even know it was a city in the world. 24 hours later, I'm in Portugal, enjoying one of the greatest, best kept secrets is travel to Porto, Portugal. There's a ton of things to do. I don't think 29 hours was enough time, but I did have an outstanding set. I flew in and out with the same flight crew on United, and no regrets. It was absolutely awesome. I knew that you would be cool on the back end and we would get this done eventually. But that was the one pang where I was like, boy, I don't like doing that to my brother. I don't think he's going to be able to fill that. Now, I know you're a busy guy and there's plenty for you to do, but also thank you for grace in advance. And
of course.
I'm glad we're doing it, but it was worth it. I'm going to put it that way. It was good.
So this down the rabbit hole we go, my friend. So when you're on a plane to Portugal, what happens when you're on a plane of a flight for that length?
Well, fortunately for me, I'm pretty good at sleeping. My dad was really good at sleeping on flights, which was good because at one point my travel schedule was 40% of the time. And you can't do that with red eyes. If you can't sleep what we call wheels up to wheels down, I can't. So I'll put the eye mask on, and maybe take something to get some sleep here, and I can usually knock that out. So I'm pretty fresh when we land. My buddy flying the plane only had an hour or two of a nap there, but I will typically journal. I will typically work through some things there and kind of take that as cave time. I get mistaken a lot as being an extrovert. I'm actually an introvert that's high functioning. So I power up by spending cave time by myself. And when I'm laying out with people, I can do it. And I would seem like an extrovert, but I really need that time in the cave to kind of recharge the battery. So that's what I'll do on the plane is I'll put the headphones on, not meet my neighbor, and typically just get some time to myself.
Yeah, I was curious about that because I'd say that I've done a journal entry on this in the last year that the most productive I am at any time is when I'm on a plane. And as someone like you, I'm sure we're going to get into this today about your journal excellence because we can see right behind you. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see over Trent's right shoulder, he has got shelves of journals. And this is one of the things that he is an expert and a master in. And I'm looking to tap into that today. But I was curious if you do that on planes.
That was one of the, I would say this, in the 90s where I was really starting to travel a lot, they didn't have Wi-Fi on planes, like even in the 2000s for the most part, no Wi-Fi on planes at all. So there was always time where you can't do anything but read a book. There's no electronics allowed. There was just, you're quiet and with your own thoughts. And that gave me a chance to focus those thoughts. So where I really got good at that to start was on planes and starting to journal. And I really appreciated that. It was also time to reread the journals. which, for years I was like writing in them, but not ever going back and rereading what I wrote, which according to Jim Rohn, he calls it 50% of the value of journaling is to reread what you wrote. And I was like, I've been doing it wrong. That was about 25 years at the time I'd been journaling. And he was like, you got to read what you're, I'm like, that makes so much sense. If it led to something good, you should probably be aware of that. He goes, if it led to something bad, even more reason to be aware of that and not repeat that mistake. 50% of the value of journaling is rereading what you wrote. So I did have to go through and deep dive and start getting through those, but I still could be better. As much as if I am an expert, I'm not reading these as much as I ought to.
If you were going to back that statement up and prove it to me somehow that 50% of the value is going back and rereading, then help me with an example in your life of when you went back and you read in your journal and you saw something, learned something. Just help me go back and
here's a classic one, right? We do tend to think that we'll remember everything, especially when it's really important and emotional in the moment. So, we were talking earlier how this will be playful, also super real. My wife and I had 2 miscarriages in between our first and now second child. So whatever, Jake, I guess technically would be if we lost 2 in between, he would have been our 4th. So we lost 2 babies to miscarriage. And the same
that's
doctor,
2002, 2003, about 20
right
years
around
ago.
there, 2002, 2003. And I wrote down that when we actually had Jake, the same doctor was there to deliver our son, a rainbow baby, after the 2 miscarriages, that was there to let us know that we were losing the first one. And I forgot that. I forgot that little gift, that little miracle, like the circle of life being like, the baby's still there. There's no heartbeat. You're going to lose the baby. And how heart-wrenching that was and how amazing she was. That was up in Ottawa, Canada. Amazing bedside manner and really helped us shepherd us through that. That same doctor was there when Jacob was born, which is one of those, like, I thought for sure I would remember that. I completely whiffed on that. And we're very clear on how amazing that season was, both hard and amazing to have a son that was born on his due date, perfect delivery. Everything about it was amazing, but it would be easy to forget some of those nuances, like the kindness of a coincidence or a miracle. I'll let you figure it out. But to have the same doctor there at one and at the other, and I wrote it in my journal, and without that emotional snapshot, I forget. And now that gift is gone if I don't journal it and have it written down somewhere. So as much as I'm sharing that, there are also moments where I'm like, hey, if I had a season of life where I was really crushing it, let's go back. What was I doing? What were the activities? What was my mindset going into that? And there, yes, I could become consciously aware of some of the things that were working. It gives me a shot at repeating it. It gives me a chance of doubling down. I like to say, when we're aware, we got a shot. But you got to get the awareness somewhere. So rereading the journal can make me more aware. So I've described it a couple times here. Let me put an exclamation point on this. Journaling for me is an emotional picture. It's an emotional snapshot, just this date and time, just like when I could look through my time hop and see posts from this day in history going back until when I've got social media or pictures. In my journal, I'm doing the same thing, but I'm excavating it from my brain, that mind's eye, and I'm capturing it on paper. So not only do I get to enjoy it, there's a future generation, a legacy aspect of this where my kids can leaf through dad's old journals and see what was going on in his head, what was going on in his mind. Hey, he seemed pretty stoic. He seemed pretty tough. And yet when I read through this, he looked like he was really up against it. And that's good because I feel up against it all the time. Right. I remember thinking that my parents, putting them on a pedestal when I was young, my dad was Superman, never felt anything. I would have loved to have read journals to see what what was really happening in that season, as opposed to, what I saw, because it's really different. As a dad, it's really different. Kids just see us being tough. And like, the reality is like, kids, I don't know how we're going to do it. This is really hard. So a journal gives us a shot at sharing that story later, but also resharing it to myself. So it gives me a chance to kind of learn from those experiences. I've already been through the experience. I've already paid the price, if you will, but it gives me an opportunity to get a little more out of that experience, good and bad. I'll put it that way.
Journaling is an emotional snapshot. I love that. And I love to ask guests about some of the more challenging times in their lives, Trent. And you just talked about one, and I'm curious for those out there who may be going through something like that, I think this is very valuable for them to hear a perspective. What was the emotional snapshot? What did that feel like? What did that look like? If you can go there,
Yeah.
what
I
was
mean,
that
part of
like
it
in that
was I
season?
knew I was okay. I knew I was good. My wife and I share faith, and that would have been a significant portion of drawing me out of that season. So I knew my personal okayness was taken care of, but I didn't feel okay at
Okay.
all. So when we lost the first child, it was early in the pregnancy, only about 8 or 9 weeks in, and I was not anticipating how that would affect me. I was not anticipating that would take me to a dark place. I was not anticipating that I would add hopes and dreams built into this little one. I'd actually had a dream that it was a boy the day I got the call. I was away on business that we were losing, that Christy was in the hospital. I was like, oh, we had a girl, and we could go home and hug Katie, which, oh, thank God for that. But, weeks later, I mean, Christy's kind of working through it because I think, for better or for worse, women are allowed to process. They're allowed to feel and have emotions. So she, lamented and worked through that and mourned the child. I had not. I was trying to be tough for her and trying to, have the stiff upper lip, broad shoulders to be able to give her hugs because she would need it, right? I was not
Okay.
anticipating needing it myself. First time I went to therapy was I'm not figuring this out on my own. I'm out of tools to deal with this on my own. Let's go and get a guru to help me navigate these waters quicker. Maybe I can get out on my own, but I can probably do it faster with somebody else. And yeah, it was an incredible experience. But part of that therapy experience was to do something I'd already been doing, which is journaling. He goes, all right, what are you working through? Let's get it on paper. Because sometimes there's stories that we'll tell ourselves. There's a narrative that feels very true, but when I write it down and look at it later, it objectively is just not true.
Mm.
And there's no hope. I'm like, well, I'll look at that and go, okay, I can see that. I feel like there's no hope. But I know objectively there absolutely is hope. And if I just keep putting one foot in front of the other, I'll get through this eventually. So it was probably the first time, and what am I there, young 30s, where I figured out that there's a gap between how I feel and how I'm doing.
Okay.
And journaling helped me to figure out the difference between the two, the gap between how I feel and how I'm actually doing. So objectively, what's the state of Trent's soul? How is he really as a human? I'm like, Trent, he's great. He's married with kids. And some of my friends will then misinterpret that and say, well, why do you need therapy? Everything's great in your life. I'm like, you're missing the point. It actually can feel worse when you know everything's good and you don't feel good. As humans, we don't know how to reconcile that. So at least on paper, I can go, all right, I can see I'm in the bag, is what the kids would say at least 10 years ago. Or I could say I'm below the line. It's okay that I'm below the line. Hey, I might even be depressed seasonally right now. And if that's the case, that's okay. Hey, Trent, it's okay to not feel good right now.
Yep.
I also then will go, okay, well, what am I going to do with this? Well, I can't just take the day. I can't just take the month off. I've got to keep going. So what does good activity look like despite the fact I don't feel great? Yeah, I can still do great even if I don't feel great today. And back then, I wouldn't have said that emotional intelligence was on my radar. EQ wasn't a thing for 30-year-old Trent Booth, but going to therapy really helped me figure out the difference between the two. This is pre-coaching. I'd not even been exposed to coaching at this point, but working through those emotions and figuring out, hey, if we can separate a little bit, if we can create a little distance between how I feel and how I'm really doing, and there often is a gap between the two, right? I'm usually doing better than I feel. By the way, there are also times where I feel great and I'm like, Trent, you might not be that strong. I'm 50 now, so I might not be able to play on a hockey team against a bunch of 18-year-olds. I'm still a hockey goalie who play ice hockey. And we did. This literally happened a couple weeks ago where my son's buddies were playing on a team against me and the old guys, and we got lit up. There's a significant gap. I'm like, I'm feeling strong. I'm pretty good in net against 50-year-olds. Right, against 18-year-olds that can nip me at will. Yeah, I got rocked. Right, so there are other times where I might feel better than I really am because I feel strong. When it turns out I'm not as good as I think I am, or I didn't have as much time to make that right turn as I thought. Car almost hit me. So both can be true. I can be, I'm trying to use the journal then to become more consciously aware, so that I've got a better shot of navigating what's really going on. Again, once we're aware, we got a shot. But let me say this too: we're just better when we're thinking. We're better when we've got a shot of aligning our choices or actions with our core values. When I'm looking at, okay, what could I do here? And if I'm pausing on paper here in the journal, I might find something that's permissible, but maybe not beneficial for everybody involved. If I'm in real time, I might have taken that permissible shot. Somebody's late and I'm pissed off about it. I might call them out in the meeting. Well, that's permissible based on what's happened here. Beneficial, there's no way I can make the argument that putting this person on blast is better for them or for me, right? Correcting privately is a core value that I have. So if I put them on blast, I scratch that emotional itch, but that's not good. So on the journal, I can figure out, what are my options? What could I do? Blow them up, finish him. No. If I'm on paper, I can pause and pivot into, well, what else could I do? I'm like, hey, let's follow the core values here. Let's dig in. Let's find out why he's late again. Let's assume a positive bias until we talk to him. And I've been surprised by how many times, it's positive. And it actually, I'm glad I didn't blow him up. There's a good reason for it. And actually, the guy came where he probably shouldn't have come even. Wow, awesome. I read that wrong. I emotionally read that wrong in real time. Hey, on the other side, sometimes it is exactly as bad as it looks, but I never regretted getting a little more information before deciding how we're going to handle this one. So in either case here, I'm smarter. I would say I'm leveraging whatever IQ I have better with EQ if I'm really thinking through it. Emotional intelligence just punches up whatever other strengths that we've got. And I don't have a better tool for my coaching clients better than journaling to help them become more aware, double down on strengths, and to be able to delegate or offset those weaknesses.
Everything that you just shared right there, dear listeners, go back and listen to on repeat, because that was a masterclass in how to work on your stuff, how to go back and correct privately things that may not have worked publicly. They may have felt like the right thing to do in the time, but actually it wasn't beneficial. And I realize that now privately. So go work on it. So I love the way you just unpacked that. Thank you.
My pleasure. It's kind of like drinking from the fire hose. I've done a few of these. So like I've got some, little packets, but like, I can't say enough about that idea of trying to slow down, that pause and that pivot. The pause and the pivot is such a key thing, especially when emotions are high. When emotions are high, can I pause? Can I pivot? Do I need to pivot into another behavior? Do I need to pivot into another emotional state? What's going on? And it's kind of like the Snickers commercial. You remember those? I don't even think they do them anymore. You're not you when you're hungry. You remember those?
You're hangry,
right? You're hangry, right? And it's so true. And it's not just when you're hangry. I mean, there's a lot of situations where I'm triggered emotionally, and I might rage. I might send it that angry text instead of like, dude, do nothing. If you do nothing, it's the best move right now. And for 5 minutes, my brain will be on fire saying you needed to finish them. I'm like, no, I needed to do exactly what I did, which was nothing. That's if I'm driving. I can't journal in that moment. But I will say I've become better. I've developed the muscles because I'm journaling, pausing to pivot, that even without the journal, I can do it a little more often. And it's just helped me put foot in mouth way less. Not zero, right? But less. If I can mitigate the number of dumb things I do, I've got a shot. I wish I figured that out in my 30s, man.
Yes. Well, first I have to comment on you and your 50-year-old friends are playing your teenage son in hockey, and he slaughtered you. I have to comment that we haven't connected too many times. Last time we talked was about 7 years ago, but I've seen on social media over time, I've seen you post photos of your son growing up playing hockey. I just have to comment. Everyone in your family has incredible hair. So just whatever those genes are, you and your wife, your son's hair is amazing. Does he still have all that
He's
giant
still got it. Yeah, I saw him the other day.
Awesome.
They call it the alpaca look. He's got this gorgeous curly hair up top and short on the sides, and he's kind of got the party. Is it party in the back, business in the front type of the mullets come back a little bit. So yeah, he's got great hair. He's got mom to thank for that one. My hair never looked as good as his does. I think my oldest daughter more carries after me with the darker hair. But yeah, Christy's golden, curly locks. He's benefited. So is Becca.
Yes. Well, let's dive into the weeds here. So you've been talking about correcting privately and helping you to figure out the gap between how you feel and actually what's really happening. And I'm curious, if you look at any of these journals on the shelf, what's one entry you can point back to and say, you know what, I may have made a mistake, or I need to just go and journal and figure this stuff out. What's been an impactful journal entry you can share with us?
Well, here's a fun one. And I'm sure if any of your listeners have a significant other, they can relate to this. There's a moment where I wrote down, why does my wife hate me? And I'm like, that's so funny. Because in real time, until I wrote it out, I really thought, I'm like, dude, she hates me. And I read it and I was like, dude, she totally doesn't. But what was going on in that moment? What circumstances are happening that I was interpreting it as?
Yeah, and what led to
she's
those,
that,
and
right?
what was your part in it?
And I could follow the grain there, and I'd go, dude. All right. So the challenge is, without that disruption, I might be running down the line of, well, she hates me because of this, and now I might be coming up with the wrong answers to remedy what's going on here. I might try to, strike back. Well, if she hates me, then this. And will escalate is not an uncommon thing, right?
Yeah.
Or, well, she's going to be like that. I'm just not going to engage. And she wants to go on date night. I'm not going to go, right? I'm going to start doing more things. I'm like, if I've misinterpreted that, I've missed wildly. So instead, I could look at this and say, okay, she's probably got unmet needs. Now, she might be giving signals that I've not met needs, or she's asking a bunch of questions the way that she's wired. I know if I pause and think through it, that she's not only not against me, right?
Yes.
It's usually that she's for me, and this is a strength of hers. I'm kind of the ready, fire, aim variety. She's ready, aim, aim, aim. She asks a lot of questions and wants perfect conditions before firing off her shot at the firing range. For me, and we don't go, we're Canadian, so we don't even own guns. But I'm using this great analogy of ready, fire, aim, where, she would take a long time to fire off the sniper rifle, whereas I'm spraying bullets and I'm hitting the target more than she is because I'm firing a lot. The benefit in our relationship is that she keeps me from setting the place on fire. She keeps me by a little bit of aim. I'm way better. I help her by getting unstuck. When I remember this, because I'm going through that journal entry where I'm like, why does my wife hate me? The key there is for the key learning point for that moment that I'm reminded of when I go back through later is let's not interpret everything through that emotional lens. It's appropriate when we kind of get outside of this, bandwidth. We step outside of these boundaries. Let's pause and let's pivot and to make sure what we're seeing is true. And I say that because in real time, when it's emotional, it's absolutely true.
Yeah.
It's the way it feels. In fact, when I was describing earlier, not doing the thing, not firing it off and escalating things feels so wrong. But now I've done this enough times, Matt, where if I just pause and go, dude, give this an hour. You're not going to care about this in an hour. Not only is this not a thing, by not escalating this will go away in a day at least. So sleep on it, And so often I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I didn't do that last night. I'm so glad I didn't send that text. It didn't require a text. It required no response. The guy who said the dumb thing knows, if Trent doesn't respond, that means something. He knows if I didn't respond, I wasn't a fan of what he said. I don't need to blow him up and now have to have a difficult conversation of reconciliation. We can work through it if I'm aware. So these journal entries just help me see that my brain, that I normally is my bread and butter. My intuition is my gut. I'm like, okay, I see this and I take action. Usually that works out. But what I've done in my old age now, a little bit of maturity, a little higher EQ, is if I can test it even a little bit. This is what I'm saying. If I show my work here, a little bit of aim. All right, I think I'm good. Let's test that it's good, and then we can move forward as opposed to just running into the burning building.
Sometimes the greatest nuggets of wisdom come from the simplest things. And what you just shared for all high action, like ready, fire, aim people, journaling can just help give you a little bit of aim. It can just help aim just a little bit.
If that's all you did, if you're just like, I'm thinking through something tough, let's put it in a paper. I call it getting linear. Because in the brain, up there in the ether, it's just swimming around. And it may or may not be interpreted that properly. My challenge is that, I don't think it's just me, I think this is psychology, is that the interpretation of that, if it's wrong and skewed, I'll get stuck on a loop and I'll keep repeating it. And if I repeat it enough times, I might really believe it. So beyond just this is how I'm feeling, I might start interpreting this as objective truth. If that's the case, I could be going the wrong direction. That's not helpful for me or anybody else involved. So this is where I'm saying this is not a luxury. And if any of your listeners that are curious about journaling, I would say don't take our word for it. Test us. Start writing down some of your thoughts. What's good? What's not good? Document this every day, even for just 5 minutes. You're busy, but you got 5 minutes. And what if the return on investment for the half hour you invest this week into journaling comes back big? I had a challenge. I figured it out. When you talk to that trusted advisor and you speak it through, you also got linear, right? So you got linear. Sometimes you're explaining the challenge. And as you're done, you're like, dude, I got it. never mind, I'm good. I got the answer. I answered my own question.
Yes.
When you're in that journal, you will find that is also a thing by just explaining it on paper. What am I working through? What are the circumstances? And as I write it out, the answer comes. This is why it is such an effective tool in therapy, and it's why it's an effective tool in my coaching practice, is to get people thinking on paper, get linear, working through the stuff. But here's the beautiful part, Matt. I know as an effective coach, the miracle then's not you and me. The miracle is them. Yes. And they see that. And now it's repeatable, now it's duplicatable, and they've got the lesson. And it's way more rich for them than if we gave them the great answers as the great Yoda. It's so much better if they can come up with the answers on their own. Now they've got a superpower that they can access when they're not talking to us. Now we're the catalyst as their coach. They came to that conclusion because of us. And part of the reason they still work with us 6, 7 years, 10 years later is because we can still help them find other wins. And by asking other questions, emerge other awareness that they can come up with other answers down the road.
You are a Yoda of sorts. In fact,
I like to think of myself as yogurt from Spaceballs, but I appreciate the thing. It feels good to hear.
Well, so I'm going to ask you for 3 levels here. Level 1 is going to be the beginner, someone that is resistant to journaling. They've never tried it. That might be a waste of time. If there's a beginner who's resistant, how do we get them into the pool? What's the first prompt or the first way that we might get them in?
It's one of the reasons I love hanging out with you, Matt DrinkOn. You help me remember things that I know to be true, and what a fun thing. And you celebrate them. You're such a great, generous host. Okay, here it is. 2 questions with qualifiers, especially for the guys. 2 questions we ask when you're starting to journal. Splashing around in the pool, question number 1, what just happened? And you've done this enough times. I write WJH. My kids would know if they see WJH at the top of my journal entry, what just happened? And people invariably ask me, Matt, what do you mean what just happened? Like, what just happened today? What just happened this week? This year? The answer is yes.
Yes.
Yes. Whatever comes up when you ask the question, and if you ask it enough times, you'll come up with what just happened this week. What just happened today? Yes, what happened this year? And having different answers there is really fun. Now, guys, if you're splashing around with this, we'll probably write a bunch of facts in bullet form, or maybe just one word.
Guilty.
So here's where this becomes magical, is when we follow up and qualify what just happened and how do I feel about that? Because if we can help you become consciously aware, sometimes I've written down, I'm elated. Jake just won his hockey game. Well, there's no loss here if I can become consciously aware of the fact that I feel good. In fact, there's been enough days where I haven't felt good that to pause in this moment and become consciously aware that I'm experiencing joy and elation, I just brightened the knob a little bit. I just enjoyed it that much more because I'm aware of it. Wow. And how many moments do we miss like that were awesome that we just didn't catch as a moment, right? So to increase return on investment for joy, great moments, become consciously aware that they happened, right? And even maybe grateful
pause
that
time,
they happened.
Interrupt right in the middle. What I love about this is that so many linear-minded, systemic-minded business people who think of journaling, they think of it as, I'm trying to solve a problem here. But you didn't necessarily say I'm trying to solve a problem. You say I'm trying to increase my joy. I'm trying to enjoy that moment. Totally different lens than I just need to try to solve my stuff. No, you can use it as an enjoyment factor to raise peace of mind, raise joy. I love that you went there.
It's so fun. And just again, awesome. With experience, Matt, and I know that you and I have the same exchange training with John Berghoff and his group there where it's a yes and. Because here's the thing. What if I just use this to solve problems? What if I just solved a problem?
Yeah.
And just moved on like we were trained to, right? Rub some dirt on it, get back in the game. Moments over from Bull Durham. I'm saying pause and celebrate the win. I just had this massive business challenge and I worked it through in my journal. Nice. This would be what I would write down. And that would sound like a South Park. Nice. One of those. So nice. So I've got that moment that I can celebrate the win, and that brightens that moment too. Part of the value of this is how emotionally wired we are, Matt. So as much as that can work against us, that works for us. When I had a win and I celebrate the win, I've got a shot at repeating and doubling down on that win going forward. I basically praised myself for making the right move, the right decision. And if I follow 1 Minute Manager, that psychology of, well done, this was really good, I'm like, I want to feel that again. I want to do that again. But instead of waiting for somebody to say attaboy and throw some gold dust at me, I just did it on my own. And if I can
Okay.
express gratitude in this moment, I've got a shot of doubling down on that.
Yes.
I've got a chance at helping others experience what I also experienced. So, shot number one, what just happened? How do I feel about that? And there are wins. Hey, I just hit some of the wins in there. What if I go, what just happened? And I'm not good. And this happens. Sometimes I tell the story about getting to the office and they're like, what just happened? I'm like, I am pissed off. I'm like, dude, it's 9:00. You see yourself, you identify as a pretty happy guy. What possibly happened between your time in the Bible this morning and getting to the office where you're not good?
Yeah.
Why are you frustrated? I'm like, well, some guy cut me off. And it was bothering me. Now, I stepped out of that.
How do you feel about it?
That's objectively stupid, Trent. I don't want to be upset. I'm just going to delete that. And that was an easy pause and pivot into that's dumb and I'm good. So sometimes it's that easy. I should say it's that simple. It's not easy to change your emotional state, is it? All right. So especially if you're not aware. And by the way, if I'm unaware, some guy cuts me off, and then the old saying, right? Dad comes home, boss yells at dad. Dad comes home, yells at mom. Mom yells at kid. Kid kicks dog. Right? Cat runs away. The whole idea of like that can trigger the whole day. Somebody cuts me off and I'm not paying attention.
I have to hit my kid to make the cat go away because I don't like cats.
Well, they taste delicious. Just like a little like chicken. Big fan of cats.
It's the chicken of the street.
How about it? Still street meat. Could be cat. The thinking here with the pause of the pivot is I want to be able to get out of that state. And the emotional state here, if it's negative, sometimes I can get out of it. Sometimes I can't get out of it. Go back to what I shared earlier. Hey, I'm below the line today. No big deal. Also, no big decisions. No big decisions when I'm feeling like this. So there's two. I promised two earlier. What just happened? We're talking about how to get into the pool, how to start journaling. What just happened and what's going to happen? Where am I at, if you will, and where am I going? Use a GPS analogy. Where's the blue dot? Where am I now? Where's the red pin? Where am I going? So if you wanted to splash around with journaling, start there. What just happened? How do I feel about that? And what's going to happen? And how do I want to feel about that? So for example, I'm not feeling good. I'm a little below the line. Try to change it. Can't in this moment. I'm like, no. Let's say, for example, I'm mourning the loss of a death of a loved one. It's appropriate for me to not feel good right now. That's probably not a rainbows and unicorns moment. That's like, try to change it. No, I'm below the line, and that's actually even appropriate today. Okay. Let's not decide about our career today. Let's not make choices about college today. Let's not allow my current state to dictate what I'm going to do today. I might notice that I'm not feeling good, and as a result, I'll put a governor on. All right. Hey, I have to go into a meeting. I'm not in a good spot. I'm going to not participate for a minute here. I might get triggered in a moment, and this is too important a meeting for me to get triggered and ruin the meeting. Let me just pause until I calm down. And I've done this, right? Where I've gone into the meeting and been quiet, feelings subside. Maybe I was able to shift, and then mid-meeting, I can come online again. No problem, right? Hey, I might even publish this to other people around me. How am I feeling? A little below line. Hey, kids, today isn't the day to ask for the sleepover. Hey, Jake, today isn't the day to ask for the $1,000 new goalie pads. Hey, Dad's a little below the line. Probably give me a little wide berth today, right? Or I can even let my wife know, hey, I'm a little cranky today, or whatever the state is. Sorry, I'm just not at my best. I know I should be celebrating, supporting you better in this moment, and I'm just a little off today. If I'm aware, I can help other people become aware, which allows all of us to kind of act appropriately, right? Otherwise, I'm pretty stoic, and people might not know, right? People might not know how I'm doing in that case. So being aware with the journal, right? When I use the journal and ask, what just happened? How do I feel about that? What's going to happen? And how do I want to feel about that?
Thank you.
It gives me a shot.
Amazing. I took some great notes, and I know where my next journal entry is going to be. Fantastic. And I would say I do this pretty well. And this basic beginner questions they're not just beginner questions. They can take you deep. So I love it. I don't even know if I should have called that the beginner question, because that could be like the masterclass question too. It could be anything.
You could rest in this one for years, and you'll just become more sophisticated in how you answer that, right? So you might ask, what just happened in my finances over the last year? For example, when we ask this in December, invariably people start thinking in the annual context, which only helps us for us to figure out where we really are. And yes, recommit to that red pin where we're going. If we're off track right now, we don't have to despair. We can actually redirect and reroute and find our way still to that red pin if we're checking in. If we're aware, we got a shot. If we're not aware, I don't know. And Matt, I would say that at some point, the goals that we have, the red pins we're chasing after, are so important, so valuable, but also will require everything we got. Journaling is not luxury. A lot of people will treat it like, well, when I've got time, then I'll start journaling. I'm like, boy, I don't know how to get you to your goals faster, better, quicker, more effectively than becoming consciously of what you're doing, aware of what you're doing, and giving yourself a shot at recalibrating if necessary. If we're off, or celebrating if you're on, so you've got a shot at continuing it. We had years together at Vector Cutco Cutlery where we used to say, it works so well, I stopped doing it. That's a Jerry Odyssey quote, right? Works so well, I stopped doing it. So here's what's fascinating. If I become consciously aware of something that's working, I've actually got a chance of continuing to do it. My wife celebrated 100 days at Burn Boot Camp yesterday, 100 times at the gym.
Wow.
Amazing. So cool, man, to see. By celebrating that, the next time she feels tired and doesn't want to go, she's like, yeah, but it's 101. I got to go. And we as humans need every 1% tether we can to the positive things that are helping us towards hitting our goals. So this is where, I will sell the joy of discipline, which is not usually what I'll talk. I will never bring up the D word when I'm talking about journaling, because there's such a cool thing. This is a good way of getting the vitamins through the smoothie. When it feels good, people will journal more, but that helps you become more emotionally intelligent. It helps you become more aware, which gives you a better shot at making better decisions.
Thank you, sir. You passed that exam. On to the next one. Okay,
let's go.
So, yes, you are now officially a doctor. So you just received your PhD from the Eternal Optimist University. So now let's go to the system. So I know you're ready, fire, aim, but there is some type of system. There is a method to this. So what might be a system or a method that someone could use to look back and reread their journals? Like how frequent? What are you looking for? Just any thoughts on the rereading in the system there?
Yeah, the reread. And I'm still a work in progress on this one, Matt, because again, there's a gap between what I know I ought to be doing and what I'm doing. I call this the integrity gap, right? I know I should be checking those journals once a week, and it's in my calendar, and oftentimes I'll skip that one. I'll treat that like a luxury time myself and not get into it. Where I'm at my best is when I'm writing during the week and I've got time scheduled to review that. So either end or start of the week. And I would recommend that people put that on a Friday. The challenge for me is I've been choosing golf instead of rereading my journal. It feels like a good decision most of the time.
Yes, it does.
However, if it's costing me the review part of that, I should probably shift that to a Thursday. Why fight that trend? If Fridays are for golfing, right?
Yes.
Then don't put yourself in a position where you're just going to miss this one habitually. Can I get some time to get up early on a Sunday morning before I get everybody out the door for church, where I could just reread what happened this past week, celebrate those wins? Hey, make sure I capture the wins from the losses, right? For the beatings I took this week, let's figure out what is the silver lining moments there. Capture those. What am I going to do different to make sure I'm not in that situation again? And or, hey, is there anything else I need to do to get us back on track there? Reviewing what was there gives us a shot, again, of just being smarter with regards to my personal circumstances. What's going on? Can I get better at navigating these waters? I don't have a better way than paying attention. This is a way to pay attention, right? So one of the analogies, as our kids are now grown, I used to hear it a lot, and I keep talking about it because it is a true saying. We would see somebody in the grocery store and they'd say, they're a little older with gray hair, you're going to miss these days. I'm like, oh, really? I'm going to miss the kid chucking all the cereal boxes out of I'm not going to miss this day. And yeah, but lo and behold, I missed their small voices. I missed the cute curls, the fact that they would skip. My 18-year-old doesn't skip much anymore, right? So all to say, the principle when I was a kid, they'd say, don't watched pot never boils. Or when you watch toast being made, it just takes forever. Why? Because we're paying attention. We're being mindful. And I would say, if you want to stretch out those young years with those kids, pay attention. Just watch.
So another hack here is you do this, you journal, you get to enjoy and be more present in those times.
So there's two ways we do it. The analog ways, what I've been hitting mostly is writing it down in the journal, and there's emotional snapshots that go with that. There's an easier way, and one that I've been doing for 2,727 days on Time Hop. It's a simple app that I referenced earlier. Time Hop just takes me through this day in history. It's going to be hard to see,
Okay.
but it just walks me through my social media pictures, posts over the years, and then it gives me opportunities to post pictures like this from, it's not 4 years ago, this is from 9 years ago when I took the kids to see Ant-Man. Took the picture, and it'll be hard to see unless you're on YouTube, right? But I now send this to the kids because 9 years ago, Jake's 11, he's 20 now, right? How old's Katie in this? 14. She's now 23. And for them to look back and go, oh, those are great. This is daddy-daughter, total kid date night where we went and saw Ant-Man with these crazies, and what a great time. But to remember that and celebrate those moments, what has been, and it stretches and elongates the time, but it also helps the kids see what we were thinking back then when they're little. They know they had daddy-daughter dates, but this reminds them of how many. Do you know what I'm saying? It makes it conscious awareness. So this would be what I would now call a digital journal. And because it automatically kicks up this day in history, it's different every day. And how addicting has it been to go through Valentine's Day through the years, through the children's birthdays through the years. So this digital journal also helps me become aware and stretch those times out so that we can have more enjoyment with discipline. Raising kids is one of our great privileges and joys. Also, it was really hard. So part of the value of this in real time, I would talk about take an emotional snapshot, go into their room while they're sleeping. Hey, parent of the 5-year-old, go into the room while they're sleeping and watch how awesome they are and drink it in, because you are going to miss these days, number one. It's creepy to do when they're 25. But when they're 5, it's awesome. Go in there and remember how much you love them, because tomorrow they're going to make withdrawals. Tomorrow they're going to freak out and make withdrawals. Today, put a deposit in that emotional bank, because remember, you love them, right? Looking through these, we used to say, hey, remember, we forget. Our brains are designed to forget and drop. But unfortunately, it drops the good and the bad stuff. By taking the pictures, by writing it down in the journal and reviewing it, we're actually practicing what's good. We're telling the brain, hey, this is good. Don't throw this out. Star this. Hashtag keep this. Right? So the brain's got a shot of not only capturing it, remembering it, but also doubling down. Like, hey, how could we create more of those moments? And how could we make new ones? So the daddy-daughter dates, my grown girls now, I'm still taking them out. We're still going to concerts. We're still going to just dinner with daddy, diners with daddy here in New Jersey, right? Just time with them. I went golfing with my son yesterday. He had the day off. He's like, Dad, can you golf? I'm like, let me move the one coaching session today. Yes, we're golfing and creating new memories so we can keep this season down, because we've loved every season so far. That probably means that I'll look back on this season and miss it. When they've got kids, they're going to have less time for me. And I'm like, well, I'm not 10 years away from that. I'm going to miss this season too, just like I have one that just kicked up the other day. Matt, my daughter was skipping at the pool. She was skipping, and I asked her, she's a little 4-year-old with blonde curls bouncing up. She's skipping at the pool. I'm like, why are you skipping? She goes, 'cause skipping's my favorite. I'm like, she goes, it makes me feel happy. I'm like, are you kidding me right now? And again, if I don't have journaling or this conscious awareness that these are wonderful moments, I miss the moment and I don't capture it on film. And I actually recorded it with a phone, and it comes up every year in my Time Hop feed. And I get to celebrate the daughter who is skipping. And it actually even gave me a leadership principle at the time. I was like, try to skip and stay mad. If you're in a bad emotional state, why don't you skip around your building and see if that doesn't change your emotional state? And Rebecca's right. If you start skipping, it's hard to stay super sour if you're skipping. Now, you might look a little silly out there, but be the fool. And again, don't take my word for it. Put me to the test. See if you can stay mad while skipping. It's hard.
I'm looking forward to seeing you face to face again and skipping to the first tee. So many great things have happened in our discussion. How can our listeners find out more about you, connect with you? And I believe you even have an offer for them too. So
I do. We do executive coaching, and we've got a limited number of seats available for somebody that we wanted to become a permanent client. But if somebody goes to our website, that is veritasleadershipgroup.org. Veritasleadershipgroup.org. And here's the key. Veritasleadershipgroup.org has a place where they could book a consultation. That's a free call for any of your listeners. Here's what I know. If they're listening to the Eternal Optimist, there's a very good chance that they are wildly aligned like you and I are.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those core values will match up. And I'm like, boy, when I heard about coaching, I thought that sounds so weird. And yeah, there's a lot of weird out there in the coaching space, Matt, as you and I are both wildly aware of. That said,
Yes.
is once you find a voice of reason that you want to tune into for a while, engage, go deep. And if that could be a good fit for you with Veritas, with you and me, we have a lot of other coaches that have all been certified and hand selected by me. So even if I'm not the perfect fit, somebody goes, man, I really wish I could have a woman that's been coaching and she's been in business for 30 years. We got that. We got a Courtney Trembler ready for you. We've got other coaches that are available in the bank there at veritasleadershipgroup.org. They can check it out. We would love to give them a free one-on-one 25-minute session where we just get to dive in, just get to hear what's going on. We have a few of these where even if it doesn't lead to coaching together, I come away enjoying and appreciating that time, meeting somebody else that's really cool. And sometimes down the road line, they're like, hey, I'm ready for coaching now. Terrific. We'd love to provide that value for you. Other people say, hey, I'm not a fit, but boy, I need to introduce you to. And we love that too. So just meeting other great people, we would love to connect with you. And that consultation would be with me. So part of that is the values. I could connect you to the right coach if I'm not the right coach. But very often I am the right coach. And we can start a relationship together where I'm waving the pom-poms for you twice a month. And we're getting together, connecting and celebrating what your superpowers are and helping you move forward to your red dot. Red pin.
VeritasLeadershipGroup.org. It's a beautiful website, and feel free to check it out here, team. It is excellent, and I can personally attest that Trent has had an outsized impact in my life at a young age, and part of who I am. I go back. I mean, we're all experiencing things one moment at a time, and whatever moment we're in, it has an impact on who we become if we let it, and you've had an impact, my friend, so I appreciate you, and I would fully endorse. Go to veritasleadershipgroup.org, check out Trent. And now, Trent, we're in the lightning round. So
let's go lightning round.
I'm going to just machine gun you with some questions.
Budweiser hot seat. That's not even a thing anymore, is it? Let's go.
The hot seat. Yes, you're in the hot seat. We may rename it
I love it.
the official Trent Booth hot seat of the Eternal Optimist podcast. Welcome to it. So, Trent, first question would be, if you had to recommend 1 to 3 books, what might be 1 to 3 books you recommend?
Faith-based book, Gentle and Lowly by Dane Ortland. I read a few years ago during pandemic, and it just hit me in a way that I wound up transcribing half of it into my journal because it was so good, and I just wanted to get so many of those nuggets. When I say transcribed half of it into my journal, it took a long time to get through the book. It's that good. It is available on Audible. I can't recommend that one enough. If somebody's curious about the Christian faith and what's it really all about, this one explains good news really in a clear way that if you're even curious, I guarantee you're going to come away from that feeling really good about what is possible, what's available there. In terms of leadership development, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, I read for the first time when I was 19. It took me 7 times picking that one up, and I had to put it down a number of times because it's not low on the cookie shelf. It is high-level writing. If he was smarter, he might have made it a little more dumbed down for us normal folk. But Dr. Stephen Covey wrote an absolute genius book that still informs me to this day. It's an annual read, and I can't believe how often I still refer to that in coaching. If somebody's new to leadership development, I can't recommend enough. If they're in management, The 1 Minute Manager, which is another easy, well, this is the opposite on that spectrum. One of the easiest books you'll ever read. If you're a quick reader, it's an hour. I'm slow. It took me 2, but it still informs day to day, even the coaching. The 1 Minute Manager, can't recommend that one enough. And if you're a parent, I would say Shepherding a Child's Heart, and that I believe is by Paul Tripp. Tripp. Shepherding a Child's Heart was so good when I read it. Our kids were older, and I really was upset that this book didn't come out 10 years before. I needed it back then.
Yeah.
I was really upset that I didn't read it any sooner. It's that good. It really did help me see that my job is to shepherd these guys. I'm not owners of these kids. I'm at best a steward. And they're not mine to abuse or hurt. They're only mine to leave better, and invest into in a meaningful way. So, and lots of great practical tips in there in terms of how to navigate those waters with them. And again, I've passed that along to a number of people since then. If I have time for one more, I know you asked for 3, but Love is the Killer app. I'm telling you, by Tim Sanders. I got to shout him out because I've bought 200 copies of that book and given them out over the years. I can't recommend that one enough. And of course, The Eternal Optimist.
That's great. Yeah, of course. Of course.
Let's
Thank
go.
you.
Little show.
And
I gotta pad the tires here.
appreciate that. And let's go to music then. You said you go to a number of concerts. What might be the genre, the artist, the song? Just talk to me for a minute or two about your music and what you'd recommend there.
Well, this is a love language for me. In fact, my wife and kids bought me a record player about 5 years ago. They gave me my first album. It was Led Zeppelin Untitled, commonly referred to as Led Zeppelin 4. Wow. If you're going to start at a library, that's a pretty great way to start. We now have dozens of records in our collection. One of my favorite new bands that are out. I mean, again, it's almost like a manufactured antique. They named themselves after a Velvet Underground song. They're called the Black Angels, and you've probably heard them even though you're not aware of it. If you saw True Detective Season 1, one of my favorite songs by them is in that, and it was that song that you heard, you're like, oh, I was walking through the airport in Dallas for a coaching gig, and I heard this song and stopped everything I was doing, Shazammed it, found it, and I've done the deep dive for this band out of Austin, Texas, and can't wait to see them live. Funny enough, talked about Led Zeppelin. There's a Led Zeppelin cover band here in the Northeast that if they come to your area, get the lead out. Musically pristine. Such amazing artists, and there's like 7 of them on stage at one point to recreate those Led Zeppelin records on stage, and so good. So good. I've seen them 4 times the last 8 months. Can't endorse them enough. Yeah, they're that good. Dave Matthews Band is coming into town tomorrow. I might have to go see them again, right? But yeah, our musical taste is quite eclectic. We saw Sarah McLachlan and Alanis Morissette. Hey, you can take us out of Canada, but you can't take the Canada out of us. So right around Canada Day, which is July 1st, we saw 2 of our most favorite Canadian women artists. The Tea Party, by the way, and the Tragically Hip are 2 Canadian bands that if you've not heard them, you need to check them out. Old school, kind of like psychedelic rock, old school kind of classic rock, but relatively recent. The Tea Party still tours. They were just in Ottawa a couple weeks ago. So love the music, man. I gave you some deep cuts there that you might not have heard already.
I have not, and here's what I'm going to do with them. Today, on the day we're recording, on the 19th of July, on a Friday night, my whole family is out of town at the in-laws for next week. My wife doesn't come back for 3 more days. So tonight, I'm going to a coffee shop. I'm going to Spotify Tea Party. I'm going to Spotify Tragically Hip. I'm going to Spotify the Black Angels. I'm going to sit there for 2 hours with my most recent Dragon Journal and work through some stuff from the Front Row Dad Summit yesterday. And
I've got your companion journal. This is the companion journal for your Dragon Journal. This is looks like a Game of Thrones style.
Well, then here's my other journal right here. Sorry, wrong one. Here is the deep oaken.
Look at that.
I know.
Man.
Some of these journals are like super cool, like Lord of the Rings type, old elven forest stuff. I love it.
I tell you, I didn't think I would like this one. It's all linen pages with no lines. And I'm like, I have to own this book. I have to own this and fill it with thoughts. $100 I spent on that journal. I'm like, worth it. It'll be worth more when I'm done with it. How about that?
Oh, here's one more. Let's not forget Dane's Dream Journal, which has been instrumental for my wife and I. We both have one, and we both do this.
Dane
and we just came back
you got to check that guy out. The Dream Machine.
Yeah, great book, great guy, decent at sports, and decent guy. All right, so
he's fine.
He's okay. So we covered music, we covered books.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to try to throw a zinger at you here and see if we can catch you off guard. Give me, and this will be the last. The 2 questions go. This is the second to last question. 3 journal questions that you've used in the past year that have had an impact for you. What might they be?
It's funny because some of my favorite ones are the ones I've been using for like 35 years here.
Okay.
What do I want? And I know that's super generic and super easy, but are you really dialing in? What do I really want? Now, I might even follow that up with, okay, what do I need? If I could become consciously aware of what some of my needs are, publish those either with people I'm working with, children, wife, etc., or even just become consciously aware, are there some of these that I can figure out on my own? For example, if I've got a free Friday night and the family's away as a dad, that's a precious set of real estate there, man. For you to go, what gives me the greatest amount of joy tonight? I'm going to a coffee shop and I'm listening for 2 hours to music that a guy I trust just recommended. What do I need? I'm like, boy, man, you start asking that question, you're going to fill your life with better things than sometimes what we just organically put in there. Right? We just might organically put in whatever's there. Most of us are not saying, what do I really need? I need 4 hours of Netflix tonight? Most of us are not answering that question that way. I'm not judging that one. Some of us might say, hey, I need to catch up on The Boys tonight. Others of us need to pause and go, all right, what do I really need? What's good for my soul tonight? What's good for me as a dad? So when the family comes back, they get a better version of me.
That's right. That
so
is
again,
fantastic.
Generic questions. What do I want and what do I need? Let's
Fantastic.
identify, become consciously aware of what some of the basic things are for me as a human being. And if I can start chasing some of those down, you can't convince me that. Here's what I love. They're generic questions, but they have very specific responses. So any of your listeners, when they apply that on a personal basis, it's going to exactly hit what they need and the things that they want. And in my experience, when people can become aware, they naturally start to close the gap on what they want and need and where they currently are.
What do I want? What do I need? And kind of a bonus. What's good for my soul? I mean, what's good for my soul?
Yeah.
I love these. These are fantastic. And we'll wrap with one last question. And that would be, you're on the Eternal Optimist podcast. When I say Eternal Optimist, what might that mean to you, Trent?
Yeah. Part of this, Matt, is I think people might misconstrue. They go, well, everything's always good for Matt. All of Matt's circumstances are rainbows and unicorns and it's sunny every day. And that is not the case. Here's what I love. Even on the hard days, even in the deepest valley days, there are things that are still good. They're still good. And Matt, I love how much of a net giver you are. This is what's great about Matt is you get the same Matt, whether you're on the podcast or you just connect with him one-on-one. This is Matt Drinkon. I mean, you are so wildly consistent. Personally, I would assume just even in your own thoughts in your journal. That doesn't mean that you don't have dark nights of the soul, right? And I know that you do. But the Eternal Optimist, part of that just might be, I know that better days are coming. I just need to keep putting one foot in front of the other. So that might be, hey, I don't feel good right now, but I know I am good. And there's hope in that alone. The Eternal Optimist is there's no reason for us to give up on that spark, on that light. There are better days ahead. One of my favorite catchphrases, might even be a tagline now, is the best is yet to come. I truly believe that. I invest deep into that one. That doesn't mean that wealth, health, and happiness is all mine. What it does mean is that whatever comes, I am good. I'm going to be okay. And maybe even better than okay if I keep asking good questions along the way.